Government is still considering adding car powership to the grid as part of emergency measures to provide electricity. Environmental Affairs Minister Barbara Creecy says her department is also considering assessments for nearly 10,000 megawatts of renewable energy projects. Minister Creecy joins us now to tell us more about the plans and some of the challenges likely to be encountered. Thank you very much, Minister, for your time this afternoon. And so a lot is swirling about car powership. But before we get into that, South Africa had the Integrated Resource Plan, and now we have the Just Energy Transition Plan. And so what should we understand about the path that we are on to secure energy in a clean manner?
Good afternoon, Dudu, and greetings to all your viewers at home. Well, I think that what I was announcing last week in my budget speech is that as we confront the current energy crisis, we can take some hope that there are significant megawatts of generation in our environmental assessment. We have worked hard to cut down on red tape so that these processes move from taking 107 days to taking 57 days. And of course, once permission is given, then these particular projects would then go to NERSA and other processes before they can get onto the grid.
Let's talk about car powership, because it's said that they will dock for the next 20 years at 3 of the country's ports. Have you given the go-ahead?
Dudu, I'm not going to discuss car powership. I'm the appeal authority. But the particular permissions that you are referring to were given by the Minister of Transport, and I'm sure she would be in the best position to answer your questions.
What should we understand about gas being connected to the grid, where the environment is concerned? Because you've got lobby groups or environmentalists who are dead set against it, outside of citing just how expensive it's going to be.
Well, I think that gas is part of the energy mix in the Integrated Resource Plan. And I think if we look globally, what we would find is that many developed countries are involved in energy transitions, and they've always seen gas as a transition enabler because gas has a lower carbon footprint than coal. So I think that we continue to believe that gas is an important transition enabler. And we recently won a court appeal decision on the gas-to-power facility in Richards Bay that would be giving 3,000 megawatts of gas power onto the grid. So I think it's important to understand that gas to energy is a component of the IRP. And it doesn't just relate to emergency generation, whether in the form of power ships or any other form of emergency generation.
Are we still on course to meet the 2030 net zero targets?
We believe that it is, despite the current energy crisis, it is possible to still meet those targets. In my speech, I talked about the fact that it may be necessary to change the decommissioning dates for some of the units at some of the aging power stations. It doesn't make sense when you're in the midst of an energy crisis to take 400 megawatts off the grid. But we believe that we can look at that schedule, and we will be able to meet both our energy needs and our decommissioning needs.
You spoke of cutting red tape for approval of renewable energy projects. What does cutting red tape mean?
Well, as I say, the original time frame for approving those projects was 107 days. We believe that all environmental assessments need to involve an assessment of the environmental impacts and the necessary mitigation measures. There also needs to be a public participation process so that affected communities are in a position to comment. Where renewable energy applications are located in what we call the REDs, or the renewable energy zones, we've already done some of the preparatory work in terms of determining areas of low, medium and high sensitivity. And so what it means is that those projects can proceed in 57 days instead of in over 3 months.
Let's talk about something else that you touched on in your speech last year. You want to encourage recycling instead of dumping at landfill sites. You've identified 40 sites across the country and spent 168 million rand on the purchase of waste collectors for municipalities.
Well, I think that what we're looking at with regard to waste is two things. The first is that we want to ensure that those landfills that we do have, the 40 that you're referring to, comply with the law. Because one of the things I think we're all concerned about is where landfills do not comply with the law, there are a lot of environmental hazards and hazards to human health that arise. On the other hand, we believe that landfilling is an old-fashioned way of dealing with waste. Most of the world is turning towards recycling. You would understand that here in Gauteng, for example, many of our landfills do not have a very lengthy life to go. And we think that it's important to look at ways in which we can improve recycling. Last year, almost 1.5 million tons of packaging waste were recycled. And this is obviously important because it minimizes the impact, particularly of plastic waste on the environment, but it's also an important new source of new industries and of new job creation.
Management of these sites, what have you seen?
Not always great. I think that a compliant landfill means it's properly lined to prevent leachate into the environment. When waste is dumped there, it's covered on a regular basis to prevent flies. And in the inspections that I have made, we've seen some pretty horrendous things. And that's why we are prioritizing these 40 biggest landfills in the country for attention. We're working together with local government, who is primarily responsible. But we believe that if we're going to move beyond where we are at the moment, it's necessary to crowd in private sector investment. And that takes us to the whole question of the price that waste disposal companies are paying for landfilling. Bearing in mind that many of our landfills are nearly full, and bearing in mind the tremendous cost of setting up new compliant landfills, we have to look at the pricing of waste. It doesn't make sense that it's cheaper to dump in a landfill than it is to recycle. And what you've seen in other countries is once they get to grips with the pricing of landfilling versus recycling, you will see the crowding in of private sector investment, and you will also see an increase in recycling.
I know, Minister, you won't be drawn on comment on car power ships, but I do wonder if you are able to address some concerns in terms of the harm to the environment on the docking of these ships. Are you able to allay fears on that?
I'm not going to speak about car power. I'm the appeal authority. Please allow me to do my due diligence should the need arise without compromising my position.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Minister Barbara Creecy is the Environmental Affairs Minister.